This is Business Therapy, healing businesses from the inside out through communication and emotional intelligence. I'm Diane Hansen, management consultant, with me co-host Christine Salvo, therapist, certified mediator, and certified hypnotherapist.
Good morning, everyone. Hello.
Good morning, everybody. I have a question for our audience. Have you ever had to hide bits of yourself in order to be accepted, maybe in a relationship, maybe at work, just really anywhere? If so, you may have experienced something called suppression. So,
hmm
Christine, what
Oh, yeah.
happens when someone suppresses themselves from a psychological standpoint?
What doesn't happen? It really is that serious. So, suppression, my favorite way of explaining this is trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It doesn't really work. So, it requires a lot of effort. But when you least expect it, it's going to pop up. So basically, like, it's going to take all of this effort to hold it down, keep it underwater. And the minute you look the other way, the minute you're not, there it goes. And then you have to face it. So one of my favorite quotes is, "What we don't deal with deals with us." And that really has a lot to do with suppression. I loved, I love this kind of math equation for mental health too. Suppression plus oppression equals depression.
Ooh,
And when you're really thinking about I want you to think about this idea of like compression, of squeezing. That's basically the psychological thing, right? Like we're squeezing something, to death, we're holding it down, we're keeping it in. And usually that does lead to a lot of emotional problems. And that can come out in many different ways. As I already said, depression, self-hatred, self-loathing, self-judgment, things like that. And then we can have behaviors and actions, addictions, eating addictions. Well, once I feel oppressed and suppressed, the one way I feel liberated is eating. And then I eat whatever I want, right? So recognizing that we can suppress and oppress in one area, but we're going to go to excess in another. So what we don't deal with deals with us. So if we're not being honest with ourselves, if we're not seeking therapy and getting more clarity on the consequences of suppression and oppression and our depression, right, then it's going to pop up. We're going to medicate, and we're going to do it usually in inappropriate and unhealthy and self-destructive ways.
I am really glad that we're having this discussion about suppression, because you listeners may have heard of this from another angle as well, and it's called your shadow. It's called the pieces of you that you don't want to see or show anybody, and it's when we face these pieces of ourselves and go, okay, you know what? I'm going to allow that because that's part of me. So, an example would be being a fit with the company you work with. If you're in a very straight-laced company, actually, I had a really interesting thing happen to me yesterday. So I'm flying back from Southern California, and I timed everything perfectly. I timed my meetings perfectly. Everything was on point. I got to the airport, and I got even into their little private lounge, and I'm taking my call, right? And then instead of the unmute button, I hit the camera button, and my mask is a snarling lion. And all of a sudden, I was trying to talk, and all I hear is the CEO saying, sorry guys, she's in an airport right now, so that's why she has that mask on. And then I turn off the camera real quick and hit the unmute button and say, sorry guys, I was going for the unmute button. Now, I had shown the CEO my mask prior to the meeting coming on because I'm proud of my quirky, weird stuff. Her response was, "You're gonna get arrested." But I was not engaging in suppression at that point. But if I was, if I was hiding my weirdness, if I was trying to play the straight lace game, I could have dumped myself straight down a shame spiral by accidentally turning on the camera and revealing my true self.
Right.
So that's what happens when you suppress is actually you are who you are. Your self pops up. And if you're trying to, square peg round hole it into a relationship, into a company culture, into a friendship, into a whatever, those pieces of you are gonna pop up, and there's gonna be one of two reactions. Oh, that's just you, or oh man, oh, oh, we didn't expect that. And now there's a big discussion.
Or not. So one of my favorite exercises to bring people through that's totally on point with what you're saying, especially when they're really self-conscious, right? Like, I don't want to go to the grocery store. I feel like people are looking at me everywhere I go, right? And so one of my favorite exercises is I go, okay, well, I want you to imagine that you're in a store, whatever store you choose, and I walk in with Marcho, or what's his name, Mark's guy, the mustache with the big nose and the rimmed glasses, right? I'm wearing
Groucho
those,
Marx.
yes, Groucho Marx glasses with a banana fruit basket on my head and a cape. And I'm just shopping, right? I want you to imagine as a stranger seeing me. So Diane, imagine seeing me and tell me your first 5 thoughts.
My first thought was, what the hell?
Yeah, okay.
Second thought was, I wonder what costume party they're going to.
Uh-huh.
Third thought was, can I go? Uh,
Uh-huh.
Fourth thought was, damn, they're brave going out in public like that. Fifth thought, um, I wonder if they had any anxiety before they left the house about doing that.
Sure. So the most you could really, I heard it in the hesitation in your voice. It was actually even difficult to come up with that 5th question. It was a little bit of a stretch, right?
Yeah.
So on average, with the most ridiculous question, people are going to have 4 thoughts about you. Who, what, when, and why.
Mm,
And then they're going to think about their grocery list again. And that's it.
yep.
So I actually did this without the bananas and without the cape. I did wear those glasses. I had to write a paper when I was in college going through school to be a therapist. And this was an assignment. And we had to go out in public in some kind of silly way and write a paper about our experience. And so I did that. I had the glasses and I did some silly stuff. And you would be surprised how many people didn't look at me at all or looked at me and looked away. Not a lot of staring. Children are the worst, right? Because they're real and they're present. And so they'll notice, but adults really are typically too consumed with themselves and what they're trying not to forget, or the conversation that they're in, or what they're doing right in that moment, right? So moral of that story is people aren't really thinking about you, just
Right.
like you're not really thinking about people. It was hard for you to come up with the 5th thing, and that's pretty typical. Some people stop at 3. They don't even know. They're like, I don't know. And so for my friends out there that are thinking about suppressing who they are, what they are, how they feel, recognize that even if people have a reaction, your first reaction was, what the hell? What the heck? That's shocking. That's weird. And then your next thought was, where's the costume party? And that's very typical. So no matter how ridiculous you look, yes, you might have the first thought might be like, that's different. And then the next thought will be curiosity.
I like that
Most
a
people
lot.
say things like, I like her fruit basket, or I don't like her. They'll start going through their list of judgments. I like it, I don't like it. I have that, I don't have that. I want that, I don't want that. And even after those lists, it's over. So even if you're going out in the world and it's like, well, that's pretty, that's ugly. Cool. That's it. That's as far as it goes. And sometimes this is a grand relief to people, especially when there's so much effort in suppressing who you are and trying to fit by the social model and fitting into this and fitting into that and all of the things that go into the social acceptance. When you realize as an adult, people aren't thinking about you, it's relieving.
So it's really interesting. How about the people who are in a relationship and they're suppressing? So maybe they're not necessarily worried about what the people in the grocery store think, but there's this piece of them that they're like, well, people really think that it's weird that I'm so into comic books. And so I'm really going to stop bringing that up on my dates because just people think I'm a nerd, and I'm just not going to bring that up. So let's put that to the side for this early process of getting to know someone.
Mm-hmm. So in an early process, it doesn't really matter. It's all interviewing. So the very first thing you're assessing is chemistry and attraction. Those are necessary for a relationship. A lot of people try to bypass that. We try to kind of do the whole like, well, there's more. But when we're really looking at the animal nature of things, chemistry and attraction are key. If you, again, what we don't deal with deals with us. So if you're not paying attention to that, it will deal with you later in the forms of usually betrayal and divorce and cheating and things like that, because you can't fake chemistry. You can't fake attraction. Those are activated by your animal brain of who would be a good partner for you to mate with and make babies with. So it's a genetic profile that your body picks up on, and you're not going to hijack it. You can try, but it usually shows up later as an issue. So number one, your first date and meeting someone should be about your attraction, your chemistry. Next, it's generally about a personality. Do I like the person's voice? Really, really specific things. These matter, again, on that animal level. You can really like someone's brain and hate the way they laugh. Now imagine spending 20 years of your life or more listening to that laugh. It's very basic stuff. So your first few dates should just be about assessing, would this person fit my life? Would I fit theirs? And that's it. Now, it's not until you've assessed and you've decided, yes, they would, and yes, I'm attracted, and yes, there's chemistry, and yes, there's intrigue and interest, and the little things they do I actually find kind of cute, not terribly obnoxious. Now that's when we're going to start going into this next level. So first we discern, we get to know someone, we interview. After that, we don't want to suppress anything. So once the trust is established, once the relationship is established, once we've both gotten the green light that we want to move forward, now is that time to go, and I have a pretty crazy family. We don't do that
Right.
first. We do that 7th, 8th. And, oh yeah, I'm kind of a workaholic. There's these things, because it wasn't really necessary in the beginning, but it is necessary now. I like comic books. Okay, how much? How much money do you spend on comic books? And really, when someone's sharing themselves, we're not coming from a judgment place. We're coming from a place of, does that fit into my life and can I make room for that thing? So if the person says, I like comic books and I literally spend $800 a month on it, okay, that would be significant. You go, wow, you really like comic books. Do you collect? Is this profitable? Is there some way that this could be meaningful for our relationship? Or do you just kind of blow it and throw them away? What do you do, right? We want to always know more. But the idea of suppressing takes away the other person's ability to, number one, get to know you, and number two, love you. Number three, neither. If that's not a fit, they deserve to know as soon as possible.
Right. So I think it's a really good point, and I really like how you brought up that it's about the chemistry, and it's about the vibe first before all of these other things. So I have a client who she would basically bring out the cavalcade of reasons why she has seen people leave before. So I'm a single mom, I have 2 kids, I work a lot, I do this, I do that. So she's bringing out kind of the cavalcade of opposite of suppression, kind of, basically vomiting up all of the things that she feels she, is it shame? Like what is the core? What's behind that?
Well, so there's different philosophies on this stuff, right? So there's one philosophy of, and I'm going to stick to what I said here. So when you're online dating, it's perfectly fine to say what you want right up front. This is who I am. This is what I want. What do you think? There's no problem with that, because really, as a woman, our job is to sort. We are sorters. So suppressing that need for connection, suppressing those needs by pushing people away before they get a chance is a strategy. And that's a tiny bit different. There's a difference between strategies and suppression. So suppression is basically, I have to hide this part of myself or I won't be accepted, loved, wanted, or fill in the blank. Strategies are typically formed in childhood of how we coped with our childhood with our parents and how we continue to cope with other people as adults. Our strategies can change. We can change them once we become aware that we're using strategies. Suppression is more of a behavior of basically swallowing something and keeping it down even though you don't want to, right? Like almost having to vomit all the time and having to keep it down. It's a lot of effort. So really looking at this dating process, if we're looking at it in that context of say what you want, there's no problem with that. Online, there's a lot of sifting to do, but when you finally meet that person in person, it's not about that part of the interview at that point. It's about the chemistry, the attraction, and the kind of natural harmony, your chemical harmony with someone.
So there's seems to be a pretty clear delineation between what a strategy is and what suppression is. And so what are some of the consequences of suppression? Suppression seems like it happens because we pretend and we push things down because we perceive some future pain. But what's the real long-term or even short-term consequence of that suppression? And would you say suppression is paramount to on not being authentic?
Actually, it's cultural. all cultures have some element of suppression. In our Western culture, and it actually depends on so many subcultures too, on where you live, the territory when you live, the culture of your family. So we've all been there. There's suppression in all of our families. We don't talk about those things. We don't express those things. We don't dress that way. Girls act like this, boys act like that. So a lot of the things that we suppress were actually handed down to us, and that's just what we know is normal. It's places like Burning Man that invite this radical inclusion and radical acceptance that start breaking that down. So that's why, a lot of people will go there and then they have to just keep going because it's the first place that they've been not suppressed in their whole life. And they can do whatever they want and express in this radical way and feel for the first time probably in their lives the joy of just being themselves, right? And whatever crazy form that takes that day, and whatever silly, outlandish, whatever that looks like, or even subtle. Some people's radical expression is very subtle. It's not dramatic or drastic at all. So try to think back even in your own family line, what was necessary to suppress, to be part of the family, be part of the clan.
Oh gosh, how long do we have? Yeah. I think that for me, what was necessary to suppress, one is my level of assertiveness as a female, because that just was not acceptable. I think another thing, suppression, sexuality, absolutely. It was not okay to be flirty and to play around or any of that, that had one certain purpose, and that purpose was post-marriage, and we just didn't even think about it or do it.
Right.
Um, and then, you know, the more specific pieces of suppression is, you know, political belief, or um, the just in general, like you're just not, you know, you're just not what men are gonna want. You need to fill in the blank here to be a good woman.
Yes. So there you go. You answered your own question. So you can see how deep suppression goes and how it even actually shows up now, even in the culture of social media.
Yep.
There's plenty of things all of us typically do not say. There's a lot of things we keep private. And that suppression is going to have less consequences because social media, although it has influence over our life and we have these digital lives on there, it's not paramount to necessarily who we are. You can have multiple pages, for instance. You can have the business page where you suppress your personal stuff. You can have the personal stuff where you suppress the business stuff. You can have the complete fake name where you go all out, and it doesn't really matter. So there are ways around that digitally. But when you're noticing, and I had you run through that exercise so that our listeners could kind of take that inventory too of going, okay, so suppression is based on where you live to some extent, and it is based on the family you live in to some extent. It's based on the career you chose to some extent. It's based on the partners that you're with, right? And in every element, there are some forms of suppression. So not all suppression is terribly bad because we do have to discern, there is some self-control elements to that. There is some like, hey, when you're at work, you don't need to wear your tutu. It's not trying to suppress you, it's just not appropriate, right? So being able to, but the true meaning that we're talking about suppression is not the difference between not doing it now or later. It's the difference between swallowing it and never saying the thing you want to say. It's swallowing it and never doing the thing you want to do. It's swallowing it and not living that purpose or going for that dream or having that conversation or telling that person that they hurt your feelings or whatever else it is. And the consequences of that can be severe. They can literally be physical. They can be manifested as health issues. Completely. It can go all the way down the line to having a shorter life. So it's nothing to joke about. And that's one of the reasons therapy, I believe, is so impactful, is I just give people a place to say it out loud without consequences. It doesn't really matter what they say. They can say, I hate my sister for doing that thing she did 21 years ago. And I go, great. I bet that felt like lifting 10,000 pounds, just saying it out loud. You don't even have to say it to her. You can say it to me, and you'll still get the benefits of saying what you need to say. And you asked earlier if it's a matter of being authentic. A lot of suppression is subconscious. A lot of people aren't even aware that they're doing it. And you need those kind of direct experiences that show you that you are, right? And I use Burning Man as an example because that's such a very specific event where anything goes, that once you go there, when you come home, you're faced with all the things that you are not.
Right.
Right? It's like, oh, I went there and I really truly felt like myself, and I really truly felt alive, and I felt expressive, and I felt artistic, and I felt all these ways. And now when I come home, I get to actually start sorting through those inauthentic pieces. But they weren't inauthentic when I was living them.
Right.
I didn't have the awareness. And so that's that other piece too. Suppression requires awareness. We have to know that we're suppressing something. And usually how you know is when it takes a lot of effort to keep it down. That's why I keep using these visuals of, keeping vomit in your throat or holding a beach ball underwater, or it takes so much effort to keep it down. And that's when you know it's time to talk to someone, because just getting it out, even in a safe environment, a therapist, a best friend, a coworker, somebody that's not involved, can help relieve some of that pressure and tension. And you'll realize you don't actually have to let it out at the same source where you got it. but letting it out is necessary for your health, for your mental health, and even for your physical health.
That's really good in terms of a differentiation there. Suppression is something that you know about, not something that you don't know about. So when you become conscious of it, that's when you make the choice to let that out, or try to hold the beach ball under the water, like, I know this about myself, but I can't show it to anyone, so now I'm gonna keep it down, keep it down, keep it down, versus, oh, that's interesting, I didn't know that about myself, but you weren't suppressing it before.
Right. And a drastic and dramatic view of this is suicide. People that have had to suppress who they are didn't feel free enough, open enough, loved enough, accepted enough, safe enough. It was harder to be alive having to suppress who they are than dying. And so we can actually see how far that can go. And when I say it can affect your physical health, it can actually lead to the end of your life. So this is nothing to really mess with. There are severe consequences. They can be all the way from minor to, like I said, life-threatening.
Right. And so if there's something, and just speaking to our listeners right now, that you're keeping down, that you're not expressing, definitely follow Christine's advice. Talk to a trusted friend, talk to a therapist, talk to and if you get to the point, talk to the person that you're keeping it down with, because keeping that down, there's a phrase that I really like, and it's we're only as sick as our secrets.
Yeah.
So keeping those secrets, keeping those suppressions, keeping those things down becomes one beach ball, two beach balls, three beach balls, and suddenly you're being popped in the face with all of it. And as Christine just mentioned, it does get serious depending on what you're suppressing and who you're suppressing it with, to the point of that ultimate, end of depression. So depression is the beginning, but suicide is the end. And to just recognize that there's something that's being suppressed right now, and coming to a peace with yourself about the okayness of expressing that, whatever it might be, because they called it in the closet for a reason.
Yeah.
Because eventually if you stay in the closet, there's no resource there for you.
Right.
So coming out of the closet meant to come out and come into the light, where there was resource, where there was support, where there was help. And it may not feel like the safe space, or the fake or the false safe space of a closet, but to find your safe spaces so that suppression isn't necessary, and living into your full and true self is truly possible. Thank you, everyone, for listening today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
This has been Business Therapy, healing businesses from the inside out through communication and emotional intelligence. I'm Diana Hansen, management consultant.
And I'm Christine Salvo, licensed marriage and family therapist, certified mediator, and certified hypnotherapist. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope this was helpful for you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.